Our problem is not that we are too weak, but our problem is that we don't recognize we are weak. Paul Washer. At 17 years old, I was speaking with my brother's wife on the phone. And she told me, Horcelie, this is the time that you can actually go and speak to your dad and explain to him, you know, express your emotions and how you feel about being born HIV positive. And I said to her, okay, no problem. So around that time, I was preparing for university and I went to visit my dad. I didn't really tell him that I was coming. So I went to his house. He opened the door, sat down in the living room, and he was actually watching TV, Al Jazeera. So I started speaking to him. I said, Dad, I want to speak to you about something. I want to say to you how I feel about being born HIV positive. So he was listening, and I expressed my emotions. I said what I needed to say that day. But afterwards, he said nothing. He had nothing to say to me. He had nothing to say to his only daughter that is born HIV positive. So I went back home, and I was speaking to my brother's wife, and she said, what did he say? I said, he said nothing. And my mom asked as well, what did your father say? I said, he didn't say nothing. And his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus replied, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. I was born in Congo in 1995. The memories of Congo that I have is walking to school, because we had to walk like for an hour, so there's no such thing as a school bus. So at 18 years old, I was walking to school. And I remember at the time, because my dad was actually already came to live in the UK, so we stayed in Congo, Kinshasa, because that's where I was born, the capital. So I went to school there, we lived with my parents, and in Congo, the Congolese culture, you normally live like everyone. So your grandparents, your cousins, and everyone's around you. But then in 2004, we moved to the UK. Everything changed. I was introduced to a new world, a new reality. I didn't know how to speak a word of English. I had to learn everything from scratch. I remember going to school and hearing names like Sophie, Claire, and I'm thinking, what kind of name is Sophie, Claire, or Chloe? No, I was so used to my own name, like Horcelie, but I didn't know those names even existed. But at 9 years old, a lot of things happened. My parents separated. And at 11 years old, that's when I was told I was born HIV positive. So the journey continued. I remember that day going to the hospital. And it became a daily routine where my mother took me to the hospital. And at first, I thought it was just another thing. But at that one specific day, I saw my mother, she was left behind. And the nurse took me in. She sat me down and she started speaking to me about HIV. I had no idea what it was. The only thing I knew about HIV was the stigma in the Congolese community. So for example, in Congo, if someone has contracted HIV in a community or in a town, what they would do is they would write a whole list of all the person that person slept with, and they would paste it on the wall on the streets. So as you're walking past, you can see everyone on that whole street that is HIV positive, or that probably has SIDA, AIDS in French. At 14 years old, growing in that pain, that grief, that unforgiveness, I decided to become a Christian. Well, I didn't decide to become a Christian, but it just happened. And at that time, I thought I saw the light. Finally, I thought to myself, you know, God is with me, and God is definitely going to heal me through all this. You know, because some of the things that we don't realize, as soon as you become a Christian, you think everything automatically changes. And that's what I thought at 14 years old. But I thought wrong. Because in 2016, when I turned 21, a lot of things changed. I remember one day, I received a phone call from my brother. He said to me, Horcelie, I just would like to tell you that both of our grandparents passed away. And I didn't know how to feel because I didn't really have that connection with my grandparents. And the only thing I remember them was that when I was in Congo, they never spoke to me. They never even gave me food to eat. I had to always wait for my mother to come back home so that I can get something to eat. So when I heard him telling me that my grandparents passed away, I was thinking, how do I forgive? I mean, it's easy to forgive someone that's alive, but how do you forgive someone that's no longer alive? So I went to volunteer. I went to South Africa with Crystal. We were there for 3 months. We were learning about HIV and AIDS, sexual reproductive health. And that time I thought it was just great to just get away from a lot of things. But no one knew my status. I didn't disclose my status to anybody at all. So we were there for 3 months. We were eating together. We argued, we fight, we had debate, everything for 3 months. But that one thing that these volunteers didn't know about me was that I was born HIV positive. But 2 days before we came back, I remember they asked each group, they said, why don't you choose 2 people from your group to stand up and speak about their experience volunteering in South Africa and what they learned from it. And I remember my group were like, oh, Horcelie, you should go ahead and do it because you love talking. You should go and do it. And I thought, oh, okay, no problem. So I stood up in front of all the volunteers, the facilitators, the team leaders, the organizers, and everyone else that knew me. So I started talking. I explained why I came to volunteer in South Africa. But then I said, why I really came to volunteer in South Africa is because I wanted to learn more about HIV, because I was born HIV positive. So that was the first time I've ever disclosed my status to a group of people that I don't know at all. But don't you know that your actions can silence another person? These scars remain generation after generations. So I came back. I decided to join a beauty pageant, Miss Congo UK. And I decided if I won, or when I win, I'll get to do some more work about HIV and AIDS in the Congolese community. And it just happened on the 1st of April, 2017. I won the beauty pageant. So I started doing work about HIV and AIDS in the Congolese community. And it was all working really well. But then one thing remained. I thought to myself, okay, I've gone through all that journey of disclosing, of people telling me about what HIV is, of hearing about it. And finally I got to a place where I can actually speak openly about it. But it's fine. But it wasn't. Everything became very, very difficult. Can you imagine you're speaking to a community or you're speaking to a group of people who've never met anyone that's HIV positive? They don't even know the difference between HIV or AIDS. If you tell them you're HIV positive, they just think you have AIDS. So it became a very, very difficult journey last year. And I remember in November 2017, I got on a train. I was in so much pain, I nearly started crying. And after that, I called my pastor. I said, if God loved me so much, why would God give me such a difficult task to do? So then, after that whole experience, I tracked back my thoughts to my father. I realized maybe the reason why he had nothing to say to me, because I've never really been in his shoes. Maybe I didn't try to understand what it means to be a parent and to raise a child that is born HIV positive. Maybe I never got that, I never gave him that chance. So to finish off, as the past influences the present and the future, in order to cure today's injuries, one must acknowledge their past. In other words, you cannot heal your present if you do not acknowledge your past. Thank you.
Honestly, thank you for coming on this stage and sharing your story. Personally, I find you absolutely inspiring. I think it takes great courage to share your story, definitely. And I really find your work as an activist and an artist inspiring. Am I right to say that your work is influenced by your Christian faith, spirituality, and your Black identity as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My question to you would be, how do you find the passion and energy for all your artistic and activist endeavors?
I can say it's a lot of work because activism and campaigning, it takes your whole energy. Like I just came back from New York on Tuesday. But finding the balance is, especially when I was in third year last year, I think it's good to take that space and that time and not to create any work, because I'll give an example. When I went to South Africa, and when I came back, I had a new inspiration of what kind of work I wanted to produce. So it's the same way since I graduated last year, I haven't produced any work. But I know when I go back to uni, I'm going to have inspiration. So I think it's, you know, just taking a gap and having that space, because otherwise I don't think I'll be able to produce any work at all, especially doing activism and campaigning.
That's fantastic, honestly. And I think your talk actually really falls well into the theme of our conference, which you have, where you actually went to Africa and you actually decided to, you know, take that step and go out of your comfort zone to actually reach out to people and do a positive impact. So again, thank you very much for coming on the stage. I would like to give you this little reminder of this conference. And again, everyone, please, a round of applause for Horcelie.